Today I'm blessed to have Paula Jane Radcliffe MBE and a British long distance runner with me. She's a former world champion in marathon, half marathon and cross country. So I'm extremely blessed and honoured to have her here. We're sitting in a beautiful office in Monaco looking at the sea caps because it's quite a windy day. Yesterday, Paula actually took part in the World and Peace Conference. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And of course, welcome Paula to Wellness Springs. And we're very honoured and blessed that you're living here in Monaco. And I know you belong to lots of associations and great charities, and one of them is Peace and Sport. So could you tell us a bit about that and your involvement? Because I know you were there yesterday.
Yes, Peace and Sport started back, I think, in 2007. Actually, an idea that was thought up by Joël Bouzou, who is a former Olympic champion in the modern pentathlon, I think in Mexico in '68. And he was very touched by a lot of ways in which sport brings peace and brings people together. There are so many examples going back through history. Christmas Day or Boxing Day truce during the war. Nelson Mandela spoke about how powerful sport was in being able to unite people. And I think increasingly in today's world, there is a need for sport to play that role and to bring people together and to stop that infighting and bitterness and the differences that we see kind of breaking cultures apart all around the world. And so Joël had the idea. He started out, I think, with about 10 champions for peace, and I think I was one of the first of those. And that's grown. Now we're over 100 champions for peace, and in the 10th year of having the ambassadors there. And ambassadors do a variety of things, from just talking about the values of sport to actually going round to areas of conflict and doing something. So many people had visited the Zakaria refugee camp in Jordan and tried to do something there. Venustini Mgabo took part in the Great Lakes Project, whereby children in Burundi and surrounding countries came together to take part in basic sports projects and sports enterprises, and just to come together and have fun, and to see kids that don't usually have the opportunity to laugh, run around and have fun. I think that's the biggest difference that we're trying to make, and it's actually very refreshing sometimes when you hear what the children say and their take on things. It's a very simple take, and I think sometimes as adults we become coloured by all of the experiences that we've had, and they sometimes see it far more clearly. And to be able to give them that opportunity to be children, to run around, to learn what it's like to be part of a team, and to give back to that team, and to respect your opponent, to respect yourself, but at the same time, regardless of where you come from, what your background is, to respect everybody else, is one of the basic things that we're trying to teach. And I think sport's very powerful for being able to do that.
And I totally agree with peace bringing and sports. I totally agree with people and the community coming together through sports. I was actually very blessed to be in South Africa with the World Cup Rugby Union in 1995. I was part of the Wallabies, the Australian Rugby Union team, and we went to visit Nelson Mandela's cell and so forth, and we met some incredible people. But just to be at the opening ceremony, it was unbelievable. And I read on the news today that the rugby world captain, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Siya, received the award yesterday. How was that?
I think that was very special, and I think the words that he spoke with were excellent as well, and very, very apt for the occasion, and probably showed why he received the award, because there were some very inspirational and very deserving people up for the award, but he was the one who received it. And he talked about how it had brought South Africa as a country together, and how kids that grew up anywhere in South Africa could now dream of being on the national sporting team and of finding more of themselves through sport, and that nothing was now restricted or blocked. And taken away from them. And I think that was very important, the message that he brought, with a smile on his face, with no chip on his shoulder, just very balanced, and talked about how that had united South Africa, and that it was a very important time for them to do so.
It's wonderful, and as you mentioned children, I think children are our future, and they're so innocent, and they're in the present moment and see things as they are. I hear that you've started something called Families on Track. Would you like to tell our audience about that?
Yes, Families on Track, I guess, started as an idea that I had. I took part in a relay run as part of the Monaco run here maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and my daughter ran the 3K section and I ran the 7K section, and she loved it, and she said, well, Mummy, why don't we have more of these where families can run together and can accomplish something as a family? And at the same time, I was doing a lot of work with the World Health Organization on a platform to try a working group to try and end childhood obesity, and what struck me there was we were trying to put all these complicated solutions in place when actually it's fairly simple if children can be able to safely access physical activity, and have that taught to them and in their daily life as a habit from their parents, and so I was trying to think about a way that I could make it fun for families to have a taste of running, to enjoy it, and hopefully something that would then get them doing something each week as a family and having that essential family time as well, which I think increasingly now, with the busy lives that we all lead, with all of the screens that are coming into play, kids are a lot less active, but as families we spend less quality time together, just talking and just having fun together. So I came up with the idea of a relay where the family achieves 10 kilometres together, and it's not really a race. You decide even how many, between 3 and 5 in the team, and what order you run, what legs you run. There's a 250 metre lap, a 500 metre lap, and a 1,000 metre lap. So it makes it a bit of fun for the kids too, making sure that they add the distances up right, they collect the balls, you pass out on your loops, and you can race as well. And then when you've achieved 10 kilometres, you run in as a family and you cross the finish line together and you celebrate what you've done, and hopefully then you keep building that on that and spending that time going for a run together every weekend, and as I say, spending that quality time together, and that first step into enjoying running and enjoying being physically active and setting up those healthy habits for a lifetime. So we did the first one in Durham in July last year as part of the Durham City Run Festival. We were very fortunate. Atom Bank came on board as a local sponsor up there, and we're looking to roll out 2 or 3 more this year, and then hopefully bring it to Monaco also in this coming year. It's a bit difficult at the moment with all of the construction, particularly around the Lovoto area, which would be ideal for hosting it, but I'm talking to ASM Monaco and the Atletismo group section there about trying to bring it in.
Yes, it is a bit of a construction site here at the moment, but with the big picture, Lovoto Beach is going to be incredible, and it's great that you've got the community being involved and bring them together. So you mentioned your daughter. Does your son run as well?
Yes, they both run. My son's 9 and my daughter's 12, almost 13. So obviously she runs a little bit more, but they're both very into the local races that I think are very well organised with ASM Monaco, and they travel to different places. We were supposed to be going to the Cross des Isles a couple of weeks ago, but because of the big storms, understandably, they didn't want to have any more damage to the island. So that one will have to wait until next year. But that's a great experience, and it's a great community, and I think that's one of the things we're also very fortunate about living here, is that the climate and the sporting opportunities available for all ages are very wide ranging, and you can get out pretty much year round. So yeah, both of my kids, I'm glad, are very physically active and do a range of different sports, and that's what I really want. I want them to have the opportunity to be physically active, to be fit and healthy, but also to be able to find whatever it is that lights that passion for them that they really want to follow further and to commit a lot more of their energy to, be it sport or be it something else entirely.
Fantastic. And you also mentioned obesity, and I know it's a global problem for adults and children worldwide. What do you do in the educational role with your children and diet?
Diet isn't necessarily a word per se that we mention or we talk about in our household, other than that of a healthy diet. And I think increasingly today, more and more often, I find myself extremely grateful to my parents for the upbringing and the balance that they gave me growing up, and the understanding of the importance of nutrition and the importance of, I think, everything in moderation, fueling your body, doing your academic work, just putting things in perspective. I think that grounding was very good. So I think subconsciously I've kind of put that, without thinking, into my own children, and they're also very lucky. They've grown up in a culture of elite sport, healthy living. So they see what athletes who achieve at the very top eat and how they fuel their body and how they train. They've kind of already put together the equation that hard work equals results, and you have to fuel your body, and that by eating the right things, by drinking enough water, that's really important. And they're also, I guess, getting a very good understanding through school and through other things in this area, through different setups and different foundations, things like TAF as well, of how important the environment is, and how important, especially living so close to the sea, how important it is that we look after the oceans.
Thank you. Yes, everything is so toxic at the moment, and it's about education again. And I believe your father was a runner. Would you like to tell the audience how you got into running and how you became this most amazing athlete you are today?
My dad ran, and my dad still runs when he can. He actually took part in our family in the relay, because my husband was away at the time last July, so he came up to Durham and ran there. He has a few problems with his knees now, so can't run as often as he liked to, but he ran at school, then he gave up, went to university, and then quit smoking when he met my mum, and put on a lot of weight, and then started back running. So as long as I've known him, he's been a runner, and he was running London marathons, Mersey marathons. We lived in Cheshire at the time. As I was growing up, and I guess I would have been about 5, 6, 7, and I would join in for runs at the weekend with him. I went down to watch him run in the London Marathon, to Liverpool to watch him run in the Mersey Marathon, and that was where I really thought, actually, I love running. I love the whole buzz around, particularly around the big marathons, but just how I felt when I was running as well. So he took me along to the local athletics club as soon as I was 9 and old enough to join. And then when we moved house from Cheshire down to Bedfordshire when I was 11, he actually did a lot of research into the best clubs for kids in the area. And that's where I met my coach, Alex Stanton, and his wife Rosemary, who coached the whole girls group at Bedford and County. And I grew up with them, and I was coached by Alex all the way through my career, and then even later when my husband took over, we still kind of worked, I guess, in tandem with Alex, but he just didn't travel quite so much.
And what is it like working with your husband, because he's a runner also, isn't he?
Yes, he was a runner. He was a miler, a 1,500 metre racer, and then his career ended a little bit prematurely through quite a serious injury. And so then he became my manager and my training partner. And then as Alex began travelling less and less, he kind of took over as the coach, but again, using most of the principles that we'd kind of worked on always with Alex. And I think on the one hand, it's very good because you have a very solid marriage where you understand and know each other very well. Having a partner that's kind of in the same profession as you and understands kind of what makes you tick, I think is very important. On the other hand, you have to put certain rules in place that stop work coming home with you every night. And I think we probably got very good at that, especially once the children were born. It was much easier to come in the door and not keep discussing what had happened in training and what had happened at the track. And then now we've kind of branched off, I guess, in different directions, doing different things. And so I guess we kind of can then maybe talk about work a little bit more at home in the evenings, but sometimes we prefer to just keep it about the family and about the kids and have it be them the priority in the home.
That's lovely, because it's so difficult to keep a relationship these days. The divorce rate is sky high, and people don't work at relationships. How did you find it being the top athlete, the world's #1 fastest runner, and juggling being a mum as well?
I think, again, it's about having perspective then, and recognising the things that are really important. So from the minute that I became pregnant, the priority became the baby, and then it became 2 babies, and then, no offence to my husband, he never took a back seat, but obviously the kids are always going to come first, and I think you always have to be the person that you would have been anyway. And I guess I never came into sport to be famous either. I came into it to see how good I could be and to see how high I could get on the sporting field, and so those other things were just something that I guess came as part and parcel, and just had to be something that I had to deal with, and sometimes it's hard to deal with, sometimes it's intrusive, sometimes there are things out there that just plainly not true, but I think having that home life and family and friends around you, as long as they know the truth, and they're very good at grounding you and kind of making you see what's really important when you come in each day, I think that's really important. So yeah, I think it's about not letting circumstances, whatever walk of life you're in, change you and change your outlook on life. Yeah, they can give you a lot more experience and maybe give you a better outlook on life, but not make you bitter and try and hold too many resentments, because I think it's very tiring for a start, trying to please everybody and trying to deal with those resentments. And I think you just have to be the right person for you and be happy with the person that you are.
Thank you. Yes, mental stability is so important as well. And how did you cope with your stardom?
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure I really thought of it like that. I think I just have my plans and my goals laid out for the year ahead, much in the same way as I did when I was competing, but now obviously they're in much wider areas, and some of them involve just supporting my children, helping them to find their own way and set their own goals there. So I try each year to think about the direction that I want to go in, and to just try and keep focused on that. And yeah, like I say, some great advice that my grandma actually gave me growing up, which was just basically give it 100%, give it everything that you want to do, give it your best shot, and that's all you can do. As long as you give it your best shot, that's all that you can ask of yourself. And just every once in a while take a step outside of your life and look back in and make sure that you're happy and proud of the person that you are and what you're doing with your life, because you only get one, so don't mess it up.
That is wonderful advice. And what advice would you give to young runners, professional athletes that are starting out today?
I think it's that much harder for kids starting out today. I think the culture surrounding sports, there's a lot of infighting even within sports. There's a lot of talk in the media. There are the elements of cheating. We've seen what happened with Russia. We saw what happened in cycling, and athletics has had its own problems as well. And I think my biggest advice would be to don't let any of that stop you from doing what you want to do. So really tune into what you want, do what you enjoy doing, and set out with the goal being to find out how good you genuinely can be. And I think if we have that moral basis intact for kids coming into sport, and like I say, that respect of your opponents, which I think is very important in sport, because everybody trains hard and works hard apart from those taking the shortcuts. So when you respect the others for having done that, and you partake in the competition in a very fair way, then I think the outcomes are much better, and you will find out how good you can be, and you don't blame other people or accuse other people without any proof just because you're not good enough to be as good as you may have wanted to be. Because I think if you give it your best shot, you should be very proud of yourself for what you have achieved, and you will be able to hold your head up high and know that you've achieved as well as you can do. And I think if we get that moral grounding everywhere, then we are maybe making a bigger impact on the fairness in sport and the anti-doping front than the investments which are sorely needed in the medical side and the testing side and the research side. But it's also making sure that moral understanding and people coming into sport for the right reasons and playing sport in the right way.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head, because I'm a firm believer you have to treat people how you want to be treated. And today now there's millions of people around the world watching sports on TV and live streaming and so forth. And I think this, it's shameful for the whole of the planet when people don't do the right thing and cheat, as you said. And it's great. I know you've been heavily involved with the anti-doping boards and so forth. And what was your experience with it? Because when you were wrongly accused many years ago, that must have been devastating.
Yes, it was. And it was, without a doubt, the hardest thing that I've ever had to contend with. I think to be accused of anything that you haven't done, but to be accused of something that so goes against everything that you believe in and everything that you've always stood for is very, very hard. And it's probably the only time in my life where I've actually needed to go and talk to a psychologist and trying to just put my own thoughts, because to get your head around the unfairness of the situation and the fact that people will believe what is being said even when it isn't true, and that there's not a way for you to be able to prove the truth, it's very hard. And that's when I think you have to again fall back on the fact that the people around you, and knowing what you did yourself, being able to look yourself in the mirror every day and know that that's right, and to be able to keep fighting, and that my family understand, and my friends and the people that matter to me know the truth and understand the truth. And I think certainly it changes and affects you as a person in terms of the judgments that you're then willing to make on other people. So very rarely now I read and believe anything in the newspapers without actually having it corroborated by people involved. And I always try and understand both sides, although there's often more than one of each story and of each claim, because too often now, I think, especially with the advent of social media and just how easy it is to anonymously fling out accusations there with not one grain of truth, and people believe it. And it's a very, very dangerous medium. And I think for an adult saying that, you have to recognise how important that is for young teenagers as well, youngsters who are now reading these things, believing them. The danger, I think, for mental ill health repercussions from all of this are huge, and that's why I'm very, very careful about what my daughter reads on social media, and that she understands that whole platform as well as possible, and the fickleness of it as well. I think it is really important, because that sense of balance and perspective, that sense of giving people the benefit of the doubt until you know and you have the proof, is becoming lost, and I think it's a very dangerous precedent.
Totally agree. And the media are so quick to point fingers, and I guess over the years that's what sells. You don't hear anything good, they're quick to point fingers. And for young children it's really hard. Like even the Dalai Lama said, one of the biggest causes in the world is stress, and it all comes from technology. For the young children on Facebook, they're forever looking to see if they've made a comment and if someone's given them a like. So they're obsessed with technology and people liking them. And you talked about environment and nature and education. And to me, it's so important to be out in nature, away from technology, and to respect the planet. And I know you mentioned about TAF, and I'm a member of TAF as well, and it's about pollution. So everything is about education. Do you go around the schools or educating people as well?
Not sometimes I go into schools, but not on a regular basis. But I think you really hit the nail on the head with it. It's about respect, and it's about respect in all walks of life. It's about respect for yourself, because yes, you're absolutely right. Kids should not be dependent on whether they are liked on social media. If they respect themselves and they know that they are doing things in the right way and they're being fair to their friends and their friends are being fair to them, that should be enough. It shouldn't matter whether you're liked or disliked on social media. The respect for the environment, I think, is so important. And I think learning and understanding a little bit more about that, we can never know too much. The importance of the oceans, respecting the oceans as well, respecting the sea. We saw the impact of the storms a few weeks ago and how that maybe wasn't respected enough. So again, that word just keeps coming back. I'm a UN clean air advocate for clean air and a World Athletics Clean Air Ambassador, and that is very important. When you hear stories like the one about poor Ella Roberto in London, who actually suffered 28 asthma attacks, and on the 28th one sadly passed away, I think in 2013, and she lived just 25 metres from a busy road in London, and they're still denying that the road pollution had anything to do with it. But on every one of those hospital admissions, the air pollution was at its highest recorded. So I think, again, it's common sense and it's respect, and it's let's do something about the future planet for our children. Let's make sure that it's there, and while we're about it, let's keep treating everybody with a bit of respect. And you talked about the journalists, and for me, I think it's in the sporting world, we have the anti-doping agencies, we have the ethics boards that are in place to make sure that everybody plays by the rules and to try and make sure that everyone plays by the rules. And part of me thinks, well, where is that in journalism? Because there is nothing to stop a journalist writing a lie, and then everybody believes that in the paper, and that goes further and further. So maybe there needs to be some kind of setup where there is actually, at the very least, a slap on the wrist when you knowingly propagate and print a lie and damage somebody's reputation, or maybe worse than that. Then a series of those results in some kind of fine or something, because in every walk of life, I think now there needs to be some kind of controlling system, because sadly it doesn't seem enough anymore to just expect for people to do the right thing.
Totally agree. And the people who are pointing the fingers, they don't realise how traumatised the victim is, and especially, like you said, when it was totally against everything that you believed in. It's very tragic, and a lot of people don't ever get over it. You mentioned seeing the psychologist for the first time. Did you? How did you manage when you were running? What did you do for self-talk? Did you visualize the track?
I was actually very lucky when I was, would have been probably about 15, 16. I was on an East of England training camp, and they taught us visualisation techniques, and I think a lot of them I'd kind of maybe intuitively just kind of developed on my own. I think my dad's very logical thinking and very good at giving me a little bit of grounding in that growing up, and I think naturally I've always been probably a very good logical thinker, very good at putting things in perspective. I'm much more of an optimist rather than a pessimist. I prefer to think about the things that have gone well rather than dwell on the things that didn't go right. And I think that certainly helped me through my career. I think remembering as well to keep everything in perspective, and that it is only sport. And there are a lot of people dealing with a lot of things that are far, far more important in life than whether a race goes well or not. So being able at the end of the day to put it in that perspective helps. I mean, it doesn't help right at the time, because obviously right then it's the biggest disaster that's ever happened to you. But when you sit down and you think about it, it's just a race. I think that definitely helps. And for me, running was much more than my profession. It was also my meditation time, my feel better time. So if I still now have a problem that I need to sort out, if I'm feeling a bit low, I'll go for a run. Even this morning I was running along the Grand Corniche up in Ayres, and you think, even though it's blowing a gale and it's hard work, you look at the view and it just puts things in perspective, and you actually think, oh, I'm very lucky to be the person that I am and to be in the situation that I am. So I think all of that really helps, and certainly when I went through that difficult time, that helped me then. And I guess the techniques that I'd learnt throughout my career about focusing on what's important, perspective, looking at yourself in the mirror, all of those things really helped me to get through that. I think the hard thing for me as a mum was seeing the impact on my daughter, because my son at the time, thankfully, was too young to really understand what was going on, but she understood, and it certainly affected her. So I think that was more where I actually needed the help, was how do I how do I help a then 8-9-year-old deal with this, and how do I make sure that in her world everything is still okay?
You hit an important point saying about your daughter, and I'm sure she would have got people pointing fingers and saying bad things to her at school. How did that affect her?
I think, again, that's maybe one of the advantages to living here. The fact that although it is, of course, a very, very privileged society, and we're very lucky to live here in Monaco. It's a very affluent society as well. It's also a very cosmopolitan and very balanced. So you're actually, in terms of racism issues or bullying issues, they're still there, but they're much, much less. And I think there's a much greater acceptance amongst the kids. They see things with a much better sense of perspective, I think, than in certain other countries around the world, where they only are in touch with people of the same nationalities that have had the same experiences growing up. Here there are so many different nationalities, and everybody has their slightly different take on it, and they all respect each other they may squabble over it, but they respect each other for their different takes on the situation. So I think that certainly helped, and I think we have a very strong rule in our family where if anything's bothering you talk about it. And thankfully, touch wood, to this point, both of my children, whenever anybody said anything at school, whenever they've been worried about something, they do come home and they do talk to me about it, and we talk about it, and we try and explain as much as possible. And to be honest, the situations from her peers were not big. It was more what she would maybe read or see, and the fact that journalists were calling the house as well.
Wow, that's total invasion of privacy as well. I don't know how you coped with it, because it's bad enough, it's so traumatic. Anyhow, that's in the past, thankfully. You mentioned asthma, and I read that you had exercise asthma as a 14-year-old, and we also mentioned pollution. For me, I think a lot of the medications today, there's so many side effects and so forth. How did you cope with the asthma, and how long did it last, and do you suffer with it now?
Yes, so I was diagnosed with exercise-induced asthma when I was 14, and I'm still asthmatic now. I think I was very, very lucky at the time, especially looking back now. I think my GP was years ahead of his time. I went in, I was actually blacking out after training runs, and I was really worried the doctor was going to say, right, that's it, you can't run anymore. And he said, no, you're asthmatic, you're going to have to take inhalers, and you're going to have to learn to control your asthma, but it's not going to stop you doing sport. In fact, sport is actually good for you because it's going to make your lungs stronger and healthier, so they'll be able to cope with the effects of the asthma much more easily. So yeah, because I was 14 at the time, I've grown up with it. I think I'm very fortunate mine isn't severe, and so long as I manage it well and I'm aware of the triggers and I increase my dose of the preventer inhaler in time, then I'm able to manage it. There are occasions, of course, when some things like flu, if I get any sort of head cold and I fly a lot, or I'm at altitude, or I go for a run when I shouldn't do, then 9 times out of 10 it's going to develop into bronchitis, or even worse, pneumonia pleurisy. But I've gotten better recognising those signs early on and stopping that developing further. And it's a huge factor in why I wanted to breastfeed both of my kids past 6 months, to minimise the effects of them inheriting it. My dad's also asthmatic, so again, he was a role model in terms of, it's not going to stop me doing what I want to do. And I work with Asthma UK, and the biggest thing that we do is reinforce to children that it's not going to stop you doing sport. In fact, doing sport is good for you, but you have to learn to control your asthma and not let it take over and control your life. And I think that's the biggest thing. But yes, it is concerning, prevalence of it and how much that's growing in today's society, and I'm sure that is linked to the air quality.
Yeah, and I come from a medical background, and I also know a lot of asthma and similar, like psoriasis and things like that. They're all part of the nervous family, so a lot of stress will bring that on as well. And have you ever tried stomach breathing? Yes,
well, that's one of the techniques that I was taught back on that camp when I was about 15, 16, was visualization and centralization, they called it, but it was essentially, just deep stomach breathing, deep relaxing. It's actually very good at getting rid of the hiccups as well. It's the best cure for hiccups that I've found. Just that generally teaching people to breathe correctly, and I think for kids that have asthma as well, so many just think you just put the inhaler in your mouth, press the button, and that's it, it's going to help. It's not. If you don't breathe the medication deep enough, it can't help it to settle down the inflammation, and also more is not better all the time. Once you've taken the dose, then that dose is going to work for 4 hours. It's no use to just keep puffing and puffing and puffing on the inhaler. So it's again back to education and back to making sure that the doctors are well educated and that they're passing that on to the kids, and the kids understand, and us understanding what we can about the environment and what we can do to safeguard it for future generations. With World Athletics, we're actually rolling out a program in stadiums around the world where we put air quality monitors into the stadiums. There's one in Monaco, there's one in Sydney, there's one in Addis Ababa, there is one in Tokyo, and we're looking at rolling out 100 or so over the next couple of years, and they will give vital information to data to help us understand air pollution much more, but also to give information to people exercising about when is the best time of day to go out and exercise. Because it's all well and good us saying, you need to get out and run, you need to be healthier, you need to be fitter, but if we're sending people out to run in air that's not clean, then we're actually giving a detrimental effect to their long-term health. So I think making sure that we're encouraging people to run at the safest time of the day as is possible, that's kind of a no-brainer, I think, for World Athletics.
Yeah, and I think especially when you're at a world-class level like yourself, it's so important, but people will aspire to you. So I know psychologically it doesn't matter if you train at club level or at the world-class level, you go through the same emotions, and you still want to take care of your body, mind. And I've been teaching meditation and stomach breathing for years, and I know psychologically people freak out, and like you said earlier about balance, we mentioned the word diet, but that's just another word for having a balance of the right types of food. So what would you advise young athletes regarding air pollution? It's wonderful that this is happening around the world.
I think just to be aware of it, and to do what we can. I mean, I think it would be naive to expect us all to suddenly stop driving our cars, to stop taking flights. We can't do that and still keep going on with our lives, but we can start thinking a little bit more about what types of cars we drive, what types of fuel we put in those, about minimising our air travel, and certainly about doing things like cutting down on our plastics use and things like that. So I think my advice would be, and hopefully it's coming soon enough, that if everybody starts to think about it and everybody starts to do those little things, yes, a couple of people doing those little things it's going to be a drop in the ocean, and it's not going to save the ocean at all. But if we all start doing that, then that can together have an impact, and it's just a little bit more awareness, a little bit more thinking about things. I mean, here we're actually very blessed with the amount of sunlight, the amount of wind we've got today, but certainly the sunlight. So we've put solar power panels on the roof of the house. Our apartment in Monaco, I think, was one of the first buildings in Monaco to have solar panels there. And I think just trying to think about things as much as possible, electric cars, and just trying to make those differences. Actually, again, here we're very lucky. I'd never drive the kids to school. I never pick them up from school. We have to just walk because it's a very short distance, and trying to kind of think about things like that as much as possible. The information we're trying to give to school kids in London is, okay, it might take you 5 minutes longer to walk to school if you walk through the parks, but it's that much better for your health and for your psychological health as well, because while you're taking some physical exercise, you're getting those mental effects of psychologically just feeling better, that little boost of endorphins as well. So it's trying to think about the bigger picture, and that 5 minutes extra in your day, 5-10 minutes extra for walking the long way around is actually a lot more added on in quality of life.
Totally agree with you. And also you mentioned we're blessed in Monaco because, especially with the children, that everybody comes from a different part of the world. And I believe we're living now in a multicultural world. Most countries you go to, people are from everywhere. And I know, certainly in business, by having a multicultural team, you can make the best choices because everybody has their input. How is it for you? Because even though you run as a single person doing the marathons, everything is part of the team as well, because you had your running coach and nutritionist and so forth, and I'm sure today it's even more micromanaged.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, everything in life, I think it is always, you're always part of a team. It's never one person on their own. It's always that team and that team working together, and every single cog in that wheel is vital. And yeah, I think it's the most important thing in today's society, increasingly as it becomes so much easier for everybody to travel and everybody to mix, then it's so much more important. I had a big team behind me. It's one of the reasons that I was a big opposer of Brexit and everything related to that, because I think what made Europe great was why it came together in the first place was that we are much stronger as a team, and everybody brings their own strength to the table. And by having all of those strengths working together, and that check and balance situation as well of something, okay, you've lost the plot there. You're not really on the right page. You need to look at this. Being able to discuss and being able to talk about that without getting offended, without getting angry, but just discussing rationally, because we might all think we're right, but none of us are right all of the time. So we need to have that kind of check and balance, that different perspective on things, and we need to respect that, yes, it might be at total odds with what we think, but it has a valid thinking behind it and a valid reason behind it. And maybe by listening to every one of those valid reasons, we can actually come out with something that is solid and strong moving forward. And my view is that everybody is always better off as part of a team than trying to do something on their own.
Thank you. It's so important, teamwork, and like you say, this is the way forward for the whole planet, and having balance and having respect. And like you said, it's if one or two of us pick up rubbish, it's not going to make an effect, but if we all do it, so through sports you're bringing the community together. And I think if all of us can make a big clear message to protect the environment as well, because we have to have a balance of everything in our life, it's going to make a big change in our world. So I'm so grateful to have you as living here in Monaco, an icon, and to have such great values and do so many good things for the planet.
Thank you. I think there are so many people all over the world who are starting to speak up more and to stand up more. And again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that people think if I do something on my own, it's not going to make any difference. But once everybody starts doing that thing anyway, just because it's the right thing to do, it is going to make a difference. And again, it's going back to the education, going back to children, and just making sure that first and foremost we teach them self-respect and to respect each other, to respect the environment, and to respect the planet. And I think if we look after those things, then things are looking rosier going forward than maybe they are right now. If we all just focus on what's the right thing for us to do right now, for ourselves, we shouldn't be thinking about that. We should be thinking about the children and what's right for them in the future.
Wonderful words of advice, because the children are our future, and we have to take one step at a time. And if you don't stand for what you believe in, nothing's going to happen. So even if it's you starting to pick up one piece of rubbish a day, people around you will watch you and see you and follow. So it's brilliant. And I just think, you hit on respect and being able to share with your children so they feel comfortable and open and can talk about what's going on. So for me, I think it's really important to forgive people for their actions and know that, if you do something wrong, we can learn by our mistakes and, you know, not be pointing the fingers. So for me, it's all about treating people with respect and giving gratitude and forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think nobody's perfect, and I think anybody who thinks they are probably the furthest from being perfect that you could imagine. And I think it is that accepting that we all make mistakes, and in fact, you're probably supposed to make mistakes, particularly as you're growing up, because that's how you learn. And the best lessons that we learn are not from victories and things going well. We learn the best lessons from defeat and from things not going our way. And then we learn how to come around that, how to get over it, and how to try again a different way, how to respect a bit more our bodies, ourselves, and other people, and how to move on a bit more. So through learning through all of those and through recognizing that, yes, people make mistakes. Whether they have made those mistakes intentionally is something very, very different. And I think the bigger question, rather than whether you ever make a mistake, is whether you learn from the mistakes and whether you meant to make them in the first place. And it's the danger of bitterness as well. I think that too often people who keep making mistakes tend to then get very bitter and then start to look to blame other people for the reasons why things haven't gone their way and why they haven't succeeded. Sometimes there is no one to blame. You just have to put it in perspective, learn from it, and move on. But carrying that bitterness with you, I think, is a very, very draining way to live your life. And I think it's far easier to learn what lessons you can, to put it behind you, deal with it, and then move on with your life and just try to make those improvements and make those adjustments moving forward. Yeah, and as you said, just forgive people who make mistakes, especially those who haven't made them deliberately.
Yes, and I know from experience with clients, when they hold on to bitterness and resentment, they end up being so sick. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned about the air pollution in London and the person who's recently died. You know, it's about taking responsibility for your actions, and nobody wants to take the responsibility for the air pollution. So this is why they're all pointing fingers and blaming other people. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think again it's not about blaming. We don't need to blame someone. We just have to do better. And it's nobody's fault, and it's all of our faults, but by all of us making a little bit of a difference and trying to change moving forward, that's the only way we're going to get out of this. So it's a little bit like kind of going back to that kindergarten class where everybody's blaming each other instead of just saying, okay, well, let's forget that, the mistake's been made, whoever did it, and now we're just going to move on and forget about it, and just hope that those mistakes aren't repeated through growing up and through society. And so that's the most important thing, is that we learn from things and we try and avoid as much as possible, and again that we work together as a team to do something about making it better in the future, because we can't do anything about the past. It's done now.
Totally agree. And what would you say has been your biggest challenge and the biggest lesson that you've learned today?
That's a good question. I think the biggest challenge for sure was for me overcoming those false accusations and false interpretation of the data that was leaked, and trying to do so in a way that was staying true to myself, that wasn't compromising a system that I actually believed in and was needed to help clean up athletics, and certainly wasn't dragging any other innocent athletes into it. And so long as I stuck with that, I think that helped me. And I guess that taught me that biggest lesson, that you can't please everybody all of the time. You just have to be true to yourself, and you have to live your life as well as you can, and value the people around you who will stand by you and who do understand the truth, and kind of focus on that. So focus on the positive things rather than focus on the negative things.
Yes, because you said also we're blessed to live in Monaco, and for some people it's very difficult, because I love the fact that you are true to yourself and you're passing that on to your children, but so many people get wrapped up with the luxuries here, like the best car, the best dress, and so forth.
Yeah, and I think I think we notice that more here, but sadly I think that's probably true in every society, and at the same time, there are a lot of people here who have some very refreshing views on how to live your life and how to carry on with that. We've talked about the way that the education system is very good here, and it is actually very cosmopolitan and gives the kids a very rounded outlook on everything. And I think in every society there are going to be those people who get hung up on appearances and on material things, but there are also going to be those who understand the important things too. And I think one of the great things about Monaco too is how supportive the Prince is of the environment, and yes, there is a lot of construction at the moment, and that looks as though it conflicts a little bit with the ideal, but I think moving forward there is that understanding and that willingness. The kids are understanding a lot more about recycling, about protecting the ocean, about respecting the sea, respecting nature, and it's trying to make sure that carries forward in the ways that we can. And of course there are economic reasons as well that have to come into play, but I think having someone in charge who understands the importance of the environment is important, and that carries through with actions and not just with lip service, then that is very, very important.
Yes, we're very blessed because we're living in the second smallest country in the world, and to have Prince Albert as an ambassador for clean, healthy living is incredible. And we might be a small country, but the voice is very strong and powerful. On that note, I would like to say thank you so much for all that you do in Monaco and around the world, and for making our world a better place to live in.
Thank you.
And where can people contact you about all these wonderful things that you're doing?
I guess we've got familiesontrack.org, and then we are setting that up at the moment. It will carry on in the Durham City Run Festival, Worcester Run, and possibly in Newcastle as well. So you can contact me through that. You can contact me on Twitter, on Instagram, or just walking around.
Thank you so much.